How much speed is too much speed? Well, today we're going to find out, because I have a build here that is specifically designed for skill speed. Now, FF14 is a very interesting game in the sense that the way that the classes are balanced is actually very structured, and very rarely do you get to go out of your way to change the way that you play. Now, there are secondary stats that can influence how you play the game, such as critical hit, determination, direct hit rate. These all have special effects. You can generally pick and choose which of these stats that you want to prioritize. If I were to switch over to my Reaper here, you could see that I have prioritized critical hit and direct hit rate so much more than anything else, because those stats are really, really good for your typical FF14 class. Now, for the monk, I have decided instead I'm going to boost just completely into skill speed. And what this results in is the fastest GCD that I was able to attain, while also still being allowed in the latest tier, which is Alpha Deus. With any other setup, you're going to lose your 580, and then you wouldn't be allowed into the newest content. So right now there is actually a little bit of a shortage of skill speed gear, but I want to talk today about how this affects the character and why it might be a good or a bad idea. FF14 is a GCD based game, in the sense that most of your skills will have the same recast time. Basically, the most common amount of time that you have between your attacks is about 2.5 seconds. Now, this can be influenced by your skill speed, which will make your whole rotation faster. And this affects basically all of your skills. So pretty much every skill that I have access to, I won't be able to use for 2.5 seconds. You know, since we have a global cooldown, and generally you'll want to keep this running basically all of the time, it opens the door for weaving. And basically what weaving is when you use a off GCD between your GCDs. Now, if you have a much lower global cooldown, then you're going to have a harder time weaving those skills in, but it is still possible. Now, if we have a look at the monk here, we can see that instead of having a global cooldown of 2.49 or 2.5 with the Reaper, we actually have a global cooldown of 2.78. And if I go ahead and use a beef stroganoff, I'll actually go down to 1.76. And this is as far down as I could get the recast time without sacrificing my availability for content. So if I were to use something like a Shadowbringer's relic weapon, I could probably get a little bit more skill speed. However, I would lose the item level, and I would also do tremendously lower damage. This is already a really bad build in terms of damage potential, and also I'm not the greatest at monk either. So it is a lose-lose situation. Not only is the build just terrible at outputting damage, it's also I'm bad at it. So overall, I'm just not doing my job as a DPS, which is really not good in a party-based game like this. But I still think it's an interesting thing to showcase, to just show you how much faster the game plays at 1.76. But why would you want to do this build? Well, the monk actually does excel in skill speed. If we go into their actions, you can see that they do have some cooldown reducing passives. So Grease Lightning will actually decrease your recast time and make you recast things a whole lot faster. And this will upgrade overall basically up until 76, where you'll have a 30% reduction in your cooldown, which honestly makes monk play a whole lot more different than anyone else. But generally their potencies are a whole lot lower than other classes. It's just that they get to use about 1.5 skills for every time another class uses 1 skill. And in this build, we actually get 2 skills in the time that one class will get 1 skill. So honestly, this might have a whole lot more potential if there was a decent level, item level 600 weapon that we could use. But I digress. Why on earth would you want to do this build? Well, another reason that you might want to do a build like this is for skills like Twin Snakes, which is actually going to give us a disciplined fist buff, and this is going to last 15 seconds. So we're going to have to use Twin Snakes every 15 seconds if we want to keep that buff on. What a lower GCD allows us to do is fit more skills, more powerful skills within that cooldown. So we'll be able to do more of the powerful skills like True Strike, which is going to do a little bit more damage, rather than having to rely on Twin Snakes to get that damage buff. However, even with all of the skill speed in the world, basically we cannot get any more skill speed. I don't think we can do another rotation without the buff falling off, which is obviously not what we want, because then the Twin Snakes is not going to be buffed, and it would have done more damage if we had kept that buff on. But Demolish is another case where you're going to be doing a whole lot more damage with the dot, but also you're going to be able to do like 2 whole rotations here without having to refresh Demolish, which is nice. It can be nice. And if you want, you could get really creative with your Perfect Balance, which allows you to use all of your skills at any point. So you could just, if you wanted to, just spam Twin Snakes and Demolish. That's not a great idea, but it's something that you can do. Because a lot of your buff window skills, your Brotherhood, your Riddle of Fire, your Riddle of Wind, Perfect Balance is like cornerstone for the monk. It's basically embedded in their whole rotation, and it is completely unaffected by your skill speed. So whether you have a GCD of 1.93 or a GCD of 1.76, you still have 40 seconds before your next Perfect Balance, which is going to fill out your chakra and allow you to do your stronger skills. So overall, you don't really get a whole lot of benefit from building into skill speed, and honestly there's not a whole lot of options. In this build, I actually have a level 88 armor because this is the highest level armor that has skill speed on it. In the case of the pants, I actually need to go to an 86 pants, so I need the Scarlet Moko pants, and that is going to be pentamelded into skill speed so that I can get the maximum amount of skill speed. And yes, that overcapped meld that's only giving 5, that is necessary to hit the 176 GCD. On top of that, we're also using a classical wristband that's pentamelded into skill speed, as well as a classical ring that's also pentamelded into skill speed. These can be augmented, and they do get more powerful. The reason why having more powerful gear is so important in Final Fantasy is because of not your tertiary stats, but your main stats, your strength and your vitality. Your vitality is going to basically linearly affect your health. The more vitality you have, the more HP you will have, the more things that you can tank, and the easier time that you will have in a dungeon. And strength is just a hard increase in your damage, so the more strength that you have, generally the better off you are. You see that this item level 600 item has 180 strength to give me, and this 590 only has 170, and that's going to affect my damage more than any amount of skill speed would give me. But I still think it's a neat thing to showcase, and honestly there is some cases where other tertiary skills are affected by your GCD. Something like Six-Sided Star usually has like a 4-second cooldown, and we've actually got it down to 3.54. This means that we can use this usually very long cooldown skill a whole lot more often. It's still not going to be your go-to option because it's just generally a bad idea. In the time that it would take you to use this 560 move with a big cooldown, you could do a 300 Boot Shine followed by a 300 True Strike, which would overall result in more damage. Okay, but let's have a look at another example. Black Mage is one of those classes that's just built different than all of the other ones. They actually want a whole lot of spell speed because of the way that their class is designed. You see, Black Mage is the typical wizard or the high mage, or basically just like the big boy caster. It's going to do a whole lot of skills. They're going to take a long time to cast, but when they go off, they're going to do a whole lot of damage. Generally, as a Black Mage, you want to fit as much Fire 4 into your rotation as possible. Now, the thing about Fire 4 is that it actually has quite a long cast time. The cast time far exceeds the recast time, so the faster you get your cast time, the more damage you're going to do, because you're basically stuck here, not moving at all. If you move during your cast, you're just going to interrupt it. So the faster you can get your casts, the more chances you'll be able to move. You can do certain things like slide casting, which will allow you to move while you're casting, but it's very finicky and you have to be very good You have to be a very good player to get it down. But even Black Mage has skills like Triple Cast, which will allow it to do their skills instant cast. And generally, you say, oh, okay, so you'd want to save that for like when you get a chance to move. No. Whenever Black Mage gets any tool that gives them any kind of comfort at all, they will just take that skill and turn it into more damage. So overall, you're just left with a class that generally wants to lower their spell speed as much as they possibly can. Since the Black Mage has no buff windows and they just generally want to piggyback off of all of the other classes doing their buffs, it's generally a good idea to get a whole lot of spell speed on your Black Mage because, again, when you're casting, you can't move and bosses in Final Fantasy will want you to move. But even Black Mage doesn't compare to the speed that Monk can get. Even with their buffs, even with the buffs such as ley lines, you're still not going to be casting as fast as a Monk can attack. But honestly, it would be kind of broken if you could, because a fully buffed Fire 4 is like 1,000 potency. It's ridiculously strong, and you just spam them. The downside, of course, is that they take a really long time to cast compared to other skills, and you can't move while you're doing them unless it's during a triple cast burst phase, which generally you don't want to be moving for anyway, because you'll probably be in your ley lines. So in this last part of the video, I'm just going to be showcasing what a 1.76 GCD will look like in actual gameplay. So if you're not interested in that, the video's over for you. Thank you for watching. Special thanks to Patreon supporters. Go ahead and check the description, all of that typical YouTube stuff. Leave a comment, all that stuff. You know what to do. But anyway, I'm just going to be showcasing what a typical Monk rotation would look like at 1.76 GCD. I'm terrible at Monk, so this rotation is probably going to suck. Do not use this as a guide, but I just thought it would be cool to showcase it because I've looked for this kind of footage before and I wasn't able to find it, so here I am making it myself. So as you can see, investing in the skill speed, well, you have way under item level items, and you're also bad at the class. You're probably not going to do enough damage to really associate yourself with the slot. Monk is one of the highest damage classes in the game right now, so if you're playing your class like this, you're probably doing your party a disservice. That being said, it still is a whole lot of fun to try it out, and I think once we have more access to skill speed gear, the build will at very least be usable, but we're taking way too many sacrifices, in my opinion, right now for it to be worth it. But with that said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.